Are you ready for this? Ready for this? Here it is. Live look at the North American financial markets. You can see the Dow Jones. It is down 1,600 points and the TSX down almost 1,200. It's not just the coronavirus outbreak that was behind this immediate 7% drop at the opening bell. Here's the other contributing factor for these incredible numbers. Oil-producing countries, namely Russia and Saudi Arabia, are arguing over production levels. So you put that on top of coronavirus, and this is what you get. Well, my next guest is closely watching this financial roller coaster. Well, not even a roller coaster, because there doesn't seem to be an upside on this. But he's following the latest plunge in oil prices as well. His name is Richard Masson. He's an executive fellow at the University of Calgary's School of Public Policy. He's also the chair of World Petroleum Council Canada. And we've reached him right now in Palm Springs, California. Don't know what you're doing down there, Richard, but I hope you're enjoying the sunshine. Nobody really enjoying any sun here, because we're all in the shade with these market numbers. What do you make of it all?
Well, this is going to be a big crisis for the oil producers and for oil-producing countries. When the two big boys decide to go to war, there's going to be a lot of casualties, and the U.S. in particular is going to be one of them, but Canada is going to face some tough times as well.
And tell me about those tough times. What should Canada be bracing for?
Canada's already had its own problems that set us up a little bit differently than the U.S. The U.S. has been growing production about 1 million barrels a day every year, so 6-7 million barrels a day over the last few years. That's caused oversupply in the world. The Saudis and Russians had worked together to kind of keep supply back, and on Friday that pact fell apart, and now they're going to produce as much as they can. Canada, we've been a little unique because we don't have enough pipelines to actually grow production. So a lot of our bigger companies have actually been paying down debt and trying to improve their balance sheets, which set them up a little bit better than some of the American companies. But there's still lots of companies in the sector who have really had a tough time because they haven't been able to raise new equity. And so there's going to be a lot of pain felt in Western Canada for sure.
And then on top of that pain, you pump in coronavirus. I mean, you just throwing up your hands and saying, what do we do next? What do we watch for next?
Well, part of the big challenge right now is understanding how long will coronavirus last. If this is a short duration event and we can get back to normal, flying, driving, production in our factories sometime in the latter half of the year, demand for oil will pick up. But if this fundamentally changes trade flows or really keeps people back, then demand for oil won't pick up, and it's going to be a longer price decline, which is going to make it more painful for companies and for governments, of course, through lower taxes and royalties.
No kidding, and for Alberta in particular. But let me ask you about Bill Morneau, our federal finance minister. Richard, he is prepping for his budget and watching all of this and going, okay, change, edit that. Well, what's your advice to him as he tries to prepare our country for maybe something he can't prepare for? I don't know.
Well, this is going to be a very big challenge because the economic environment was already pretty weak in Western Canada, and that affects supply chains across the country. You've got to remember that oil and gas is already our largest export. It's twice the size of autos. And so the cutbacks that are going to come to capital spending and to employment will ripple across the country, making it very difficult for a finance minister to balance a budget. And in Western Canada, a lot of companies, as I said, are already on the ropes. They haven't been able to raise new equity for at least 18 months. And so we're going to need some support, or we're going to lose a lot of our native companies, and we won't be able to bounce back when oil prices recover.
But what advice do you have? I mean, what can the Canadian government do to mitigate some of these factors?
Well, one of the things they're probably going to have to look at is, can they provide loans to companies to get them through? Banks from Toronto may not be too keen to extend more loans to companies they're already fairly exposed to. And if companies can't get financing from the equity market, they're going to need financing somehow, or they're going to go under. And so this, in the small junior E&P sector in particular, they're very vulnerable. The bigger companies are doing okay. They've been paying down debt. But it's, government programs that can help keep companies going and keep some jobs would be one thing I'd recommend.
Final question for you, Richard. How much of this is a blip? I mean, maybe I'm not trying to be facetious, okay? Maybe it's a naive question, but could Russia and Saudi Arabia, could they kiss and make up, and could we wake up to a different world tomorrow?
It's possible, because this is going to be very painful for both of them. But the challenge is, it's not them who caused the issue, it's the United States. As they found shale in Texas, and they've been growing production by, as I said, 6-7 million barrels a day over the last few years, it's really oversupplied the world, and Russia and Saudi had been cutting back to try and balance that. And those companies act independently. There's no government control. So the only really way to slow their growth in production and get them to actually cut back is through the pain of the market. And that's what's going to happen. And how long it takes, it's hard to say. But I think that, as long as Russia and Saudi decide to carry on with this path about trying to force the U.S. to lower production, it's gonna be a painful time for all companies in Canada.
Great to have your insight on the program, Richard, and I thank you for your time.
Great to be here. Thanks very much.
Richard Masson, chair of the World Petroleum Council Canada. Right now, he's in Palm Springs, California.